and welcome to another episode of Little Give. Today, we are excited about our guest. He's got so many things going on. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, tell us what you're all about.
Hello. Well, Cindy, first of all, thank you for having me on your broadcast. I'm Dr. Nicholas Lewis Baham. I am a professor of ethnic studies at California State University, East Bay. I'm also a new author of crime fiction, a book entitled The People's Detective, which is centered in Oakland, California. And the series that I'm developing will deal with a lot of problems that are central to Oakland, California, and really small urban cities, mid-sized urban cities like Oakland. The first book deals with the phenomena of sex trafficking, which is an epidemic here in Northern California. We have a very large port here in Oakland, and that is kind of makes us sort of a hub of this activity in this area. So I'm here really to talk with you a little bit about that work. And then if there are any questions that you have about some of my previous work, my academic work, I know that you're interested in my work with the Coltrane Church as well. I wrote my first academic book was on a church in San Francisco that venerates jazz musician, jazz legend John Coltrane as a saint.
Wow. Okay, this is so much to peel back. I'm so excited to kind of peel back the layers of your story. So let's kind of start at the beginning. I know you didn't just wake up one day and become a published author. So tell us a bit about that journey and how you kind of became this author of this amazing books.
Yeah, so this all started for me when really let's just sort of begin with graduate school, if you will, at Indiana University, where I earned a PhD in anthropology, and I've always been interested in marginalized communities and how marginalized communities manage to obtain and seize power for themselves and for their communities, and that's political power, cultural power, economic power. And by marginalized communities, I'm not necessarily always interested in the most easily identifiable marginalized communities. So I'm a scholar who is interested in Black communities and the anthropology of Black communities, but I'm specifically interested in marginalized communities within Black communities. So, for example, the Coltrane Church is not and does not represent a mainstream form of Christian religious worship uh, that is largely and widely practiced throughout Black communities in America. They are part of the broader African Orthodox Church, which had an affiliation with the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey in the early 20th century. But the African Orthodox Church is really not one of the dominant denominations in Black Christian worship. And then this notion of uplifting someone who was a jazz musician and a an individual who moved himself away through prayer off of heroin addiction and then sort of devoted the rest of his life to God, devoted his life and music to God and to changing the hearts and minds of people through music. That's not a typical story in Black religious worship. The sort of centering of someone from what we in America might think of as a profane world. You know, we have these divisions of the sacred and the profane. The jazz club is one thing, the church is another. To bring those two together is fairly odd, although there are examples of things like blues and gospel music, right, coming together. Uh, Certainly forms right now of hip hop infused in gospel music. So there's crossover, even if we don't want to admit it. But this is a fairly uncommon form of worship. And so I'm interested in how a group like this, which has now been around more than 50 years and counting, has been able to survive and have some amount of cultural power in the San Francisco Bay Area, has been involved in the politics of San Francisco, fighting things like the foreclosures, especially during the Great Recession, environmental racism, and they were also part of the Oscar Grant movement, which later kind of morphed in everybody's broader understanding into Black Lives Matter. So, how have they been able to do these kinds of things? And yet, we are talking about a group of people who are working class, and who have a form currently do not have a church building, and who are outside of the mainstream of religious worship. So that's always fascinated me. And then this recent turn that I've taken with fiction, I'm interested in this one in marginalized voices again. So I had a podcast a number of years ago called Along the Line, and we were doing a critical media literacy thing. That was the overall mission of the podcast. And we were looking for stories that mainstream media wasn't telling. And one of the bigger stories out here that people simply weren't telling were involved the stories of missing women, particularly women of color, Black, Latinx, um, a lot of American Indian women, and poor European American, working class European American women who are just disappearing off of the streets of our cities. No one talks about that. These aren't stories that you hear every day in the news. Often the cases are not resolved. And as I started to look into this nationally, this is a major epidemic in the country and certainly in this area. Why aren't these stories being covered? Why aren't the organizations that seek to find missing persons being covered? Um, so the first book that I wrote in this fictional series, The People's Detective, deals with that. The second book, which I'm working on right now, will deal with yet another issue that is, I think, widely misunderstood and, if not underreported, misreported, and that is the movement of unhoused persons in this area. People talk about the homelessness in this area, but people don't really talk about it from the level of understanding who unhoused persons are, how they get to be unhoused, what they want, and what the fight out here for fair housing is all about, particularly in spaces like such as I live in that are incredibly expensive, and the real estate is really expensive out here.
Hi, my name is Justin Clark, and I'm the president of the board of directors for Driving Single Parents, a 501c3 nonprofit serving the citizens of San Antonio and Bexar County, Texas. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the great work that our organization is doing for the citizens of San Antonio. What you're about to see is just a few photos and videos of the way that we're changing lives for single parents in and around San Antonio, Texas. Our first giveaway took place in April of 2017, just one short month after the formation of our organization. John, a Bexar County resident, was the victim of a horrible drunk driver incident. He and his daughter survived the crash, and we were so proud to give our first car to this deserving family. Fast forward to 2020, a very difficult year for nonprofits. We were able to secure 4 vehicles for single parents in need. Our organization, including our board of directors, list of partners, and portfolio of people we've been able to help in San Antonio, continues to grow, and it's all thanks to donors and local community organizations that have helped us along the way. This giveaway took place in 2021 and shows that we continue to help single parents even after the struggles brought about by COVID-19. Because of limited funds and the overwhelming need, we at Driving Single Parents are incredibly selective with the people we help. Some are victims of domestic violence. Others had a spouse pass away tragically, or otherwise fell on hard times. These single parents show adversity in the face of challenge and aren't looking for a handout. We offer a hand up and help get them back in the driver's seat. Many of the single parents we help go on to graduate college, get promotions, get married, mentor others, and some have even been so touched by the gift we gave them that they have decided to join our board of directors to pay it forward and ensure the continued growth of our organization. If you would like to help our organization continue to grow and continue to help single parents in need in San Antonio, Texas, and Bexar County, Texas, we would really appreciate your support. Please visit us online at www.drivingsingleparents.org. Thank you.
So why do you think it is? I mean, in both cases, with both books, we were talking about how, they're underreported or misrepresented, or nobody's really looking into it. And all your research, what have you found? Like, why is it that nobody's really looking into missing women? And why is it that people are also not really understanding the homelessness?
Yeah, I think that marginalized people are marginalized for particular reasons, and they don't fit into the dominant narratives that we like to tell about ourselves. This isn't a narrative that we like to tell about ourselves, right? We are a great country. We don't like to talk about what we do to women and the way that we treat women in this country. It sort of slips past the narrative. We don't like to talk about what we do to and have done to people of color. We don't like to talk about what we do to poor people, right? Um, we live in a really interesting country because there's so many. It's true that on the one hand, there's so many possibilities in our country, and there are so many people who come to our country seeking better economic opportunities and possibilities, political possibilities too, as well as economic and cultural. But at the same time, we do have really profound histories of marginalization, degradation, racism, and sexism, classism are deep parts of our history. And those aren't stories that we're comfortable with telling. America, I think, consistently does have a problem with confronting the truth and telling the truth. It's often that the problem in the country is telling the truth, not actually addressing the problem or the issue itself. And so these stories get pushed to the margin. For myself, as a person who was working for a long time in critical media literacy, we often talk about the influence of corporate media. I didn't mention this earlier, but I also wrote a book about podcasting called The Podcaster's Dilemma, co-written with my old podcasting co-host, Nolan Higdon. And we were interested in how podcasting could offer an antidote to be able to tell the stories that really reflect our real lived experiences that corporate media was not willing to tell. And by corporate and legacy media, we're really talking about, I mean, look at the commercials. Look at who's supporting the programs that you're seeing, whether those are oil companies or telecom companies or insurance companies, whatever. Um, do you not think that some of what's being presented to you is being shaped by the moneyed interests that are funding those programs? And what are they interested in you seeing? What are they interested in you not seeing? What narratives are comfortable for them and what narratives are uncomfortable for them? It's not, and I'm not talking about a conspiracy. I'm just talking about the way things work and naturally work systemically, given who's involved in the production of your news.
Mhm.
It's not sort of a sinister sort of James Bond thing. It's just an understanding of how a system works when it is run and influenced by moneyed interests, which makes, by the way, something like podcasting potentially liberating. Although there's now a lot of moneyed interest in podcasting too, right?
Mhm.
NBC does podcasts for its programs.
Yeah.
So legacy media is in that space. But there are also spaces for people to tell stories such as the stories that you tell with
Mhm.
little give that are not featured in mainstream media. And there's plenty of space if you think about it, to tell the stories
Oh,
that
yeah.
you want to tell about charities, about giving, and you think about just some of your programs, how how much sunshine, literal sunshine could get brought into your day to wake up to hear about somebody doing something good in your area, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not
Absolutely.
but it's not featured in legacy media. But
Mhm.
nobody's paying for that.
Bad news sales,
It
bad news sales.
does.
And I
Yeah,
agree with you that the podcasting really gives people with, a platform to share their agenda, like you said, with this podcast and this, it's a TV show and a podcast. And it's really
right.
all about me. And my agenda is to spread kindness and the ripple effect of love and how there's little things you can do. And I think shining a light on the good news is really, really so important because bad news sells. And so that's what you see a lot more of than the good quality people that are in this world. There's so many wonderful people in this world like you who are out there doing amazing things to make the world better. And it seems like those kind of go to the wayside because, we're too busy showing all the negativity. So I 100% agree that, you have a whole new way with podcasting to really get your voice out and share your agenda. And maybe that's not backed up by millions of dollars, but everybody does have a good, powerful message to share.
Yes, and you create community through what you do.
Mhm.
So the other part of, I think that I've discovered of authorship, whether it's academic or as I've now begun to engage in it, fictional, genre fiction writing, is that you create, or podcasting, you create communities around what you do.
Mhm.
They're of people who are interested and like-minded. One of the things that I wanted to do with my fiction series, and I think I should explain why I went from writing academic books to wanting to write a fictional series. Uh, the first reason is accessibility, right? So let's do away with jargon. Let's do away with deep analysis, but let's still talk about issues and let's do it in a super accessible way through a story. Stories and narratives are accessible, and people
Mhm.
remember story and narrative. The other
True.
reason is that my academic books are more expensive, and I have less control over the cost of them. So, if I can sell a paperback, a novel for under $15 as opposed to, selling an academic book for 30 or 35 or $39, well, I'm gonna get more people who can access that and read it. The other thing is that, it's always been something, this is sort of just personal, it's something that I've always wanted to do.
Ah.
To see if there are ways that there is a tradition in particular in Black detective fiction of, whether, with it sort of starts with around people like Chester Himes, but also with someone that I know your audience is familiar with, Walter Mosley, of using the format of Black detective fiction to tell stories that are really germane to your community and have meaning and social impact. The same thing can be said of Afrofuturist writing, fantasy writing, any form of genre fiction, including African American film. Any good African American film has some kind of message within it for the community. It's always had it, whether
Mhm.
historically or something that you just saw uh, yesterday on Netflix. And I decided that I wanted to see if I could participate in that genre and not only tell the story of sex trafficking to draw people's attention to something that they might wish to combat in their own way. At the end of the book, I have lists of nonprofits who are fighting this that you can contribute to. Many of whom are locally based. But I also decided that I really wanted to elevate Oakland, California. So I'm a native of San Francisco, born and raised. My father had a business in Oakland when I was a kid. When I married in 1995, my wife and I decided that we would make our home in Oakland, California, which makes sense for me working at Cal State East Bay. which is in Hayward, California. And so this has been our home, more or less, off and on, since 1995. It's a wonderful place. It takes a lot of heat in terms of national media, in terms of, everything that's wrong with Oakland. Yes, our politics are broken. We don't really have a mayor right now. We recalled our mayor. We have been dealing with a crime spree, although the murder rate has dropped significantly in the past number of months. Um, there are a lot of problems, but there are a lot of problems in every city.
That's
And yet
true.
there's a real beauty and a real soul to Oakland, and I wanted to elevate Oakland as a character. And I think the only way to do that is through what I'm trying to do with, the fiction,
Yeah.
to make it a character, to center something. There's plenty of detective fiction that's centered in San Francisco, LA, New York. Why doesn't Oakland have its own? You
Yeah,
know?
well, it does now.
It does now, yeah.
Does now, which is awesome.
Hi, my name is Andrew Fraley, and I believe that sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're in the San Antonio community and you need some legal help, call me at 210-725-4658.
Whenever you were deciding on your book and the title and all the things, did you ever consider doing a true crime, or was it immediately in your mind as it's going to be a fiction?
It's
And
a
then,
really good question. Excellent question. So initially, I wanted to do it as a true crime piece.
Mhm.
And I had amassed a number of details of a variety of stories of missing, kidnapped, and trafficked young women. But I needed to get the permission of the families to be able to use the names and then really dig into the stories and do the investigative work from there. Um, I I got in the rounds of communications that I went through, I got back a couple of responses. One particular pointed response in particular was somebody said, go ahead and do it. We don't know much about what happened to her. It was someone's sister. Go ahead and do it. Mention her name. Deal with it. Um, and then I realized that I needed to tell the story. In order to tell the story of one, you have to tell the story of many,
Mhm.
because there are details that you have to put together in all of these different cases. And what I was really interested in is, how does something like this happen? Where, for example, you have up to anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000 young women trafficked off the streets of America on an annual basis. Okay. This is globally the second biggest crime behind drug trafficking. Okay. So, how does this happen year in and year out? Well, the only way that this happens year in and year out is if there are powerful forces around it. So you've got to put together little bits and pieces here and there from different cases that might lead you in a particular direction. Well, I didn't have enough approval from enough families, and then I began to realize, as if I couldn't have realized this from the very beginning, how really triggering that could be for families to have to kind of relive this. I also realized that some of the speculation that I have about who might be involved it's so circumstantial. So discussions that I've had with a couple of police officers who've been on these beats, things that I've read, and I also wanted to get a little bit more expansive and wilder with it, and call out different groups of people. So I wanted to call out Black power in this city, entrenched Black power in the city. I wanted to call out um, even more powerful corporate power, as allied with that local power in the city. I wanted to call out police. There have been stories of police in Oakland trafficking young women. In fact, there's a case a couple of years ago of a 17-year-old girl who several Oakland police officers trafficked, abused, slept with, whatever term you want to use. It's rape, and there's no other way to look at this. And the Oakland police have numerous scandals. So I wanted to involve Oakland police at the center of it, and I wanted to kind of go from the sort of basic level of the street where it happens, all the way up to a through the mayor's office, um, city council, chamber of commerce, all the way up to some of the corporate interests, particularly those from Silicon Valley, who are coming up here to Oakland, buying up property, um, manipulating our political system. And I want to do that throughout in all of the books. The second book, I'm dealing with homelessness from the perspective of real estate development, in particular corporate real estate development, people who are buying up large tracts of land, the expensive luxury condos that are being built, et cetera, and the displacement of people from their homes to the street. Again, not as a conspiracy, but as a system. But then there was a part of me that did want to kind of I needed a villain for this. So I have a villain who is without giving it away, who is posing as a philanthropist. Because I want people to kind of think about things that there are things that you see in public faces, and there's something behind those public faces sometimes.
Right.
Right? So I needed the artistic license to do whatever I wanted to do, to be able to speculate as wildly as I wanted to. And then I also decided I really kind of probably owe it to the families of the victims to not present anything that could be triggering to them. So I
Yeah,
then
that
fictionalize it.
yeah, that makes sense, and then you have creative control, and then you don't have
That's
to
right.
worry about any of the other stipulations and all. You can kind of get creative control and decide how you want the narrative to play out without having to be too fact checking, yeah, so I totally understand why you went with the fiction. That's so neat. Did you always want to become an author, or
Yeah.
was this just something that kind of just so even in your youth, you were, I want to be an author one day?
Yeah, when I was 15, I wrote a spy novel, and
Ah.
I hand wrote it. I still have it, by the way. It's not very good. It's not very good, but it's wild. Even when I was really young, I had this crazy, just absolutely crazy imagination. So, it has some really fantastic stuff going on in it. Yeah, I always wanted to do this, and I think that, having a chance to become an academic was and doing academic writing also released for me some of my desire to communicate through the written form. There is an art to academic writing, and for those who have read my Coltrane Church book, there are moments that are quite that are, where I'm drawing on literature. I'm doing things like I remember when I was writing that book, I remember reading James Baldwin's descriptions of being in the black church in his first novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain, in order to gain inspiration for how I would write about religious services at the Coltrane Church. I also had the fortune to meet James Baldwin when I was young, in college, the year before he passed. And I mean, when you want to be a writer and you meet writers, it's it's so life changing. So I've been fortunate to meet Baldwin, Mary Baraka, Leroy Jones, who I met twice. I had the second time I met him, I had a chance to thank him for what he said the first time that I met him. And Alice Walker, I met in on Haight Street in San Francisco, and I was shopping for sneakers, but also still really struggling with my dissertation topic. And there was something about standing in front of her while I was reading her book. I met her while I was reading her book, Possessing the Secret of Joy, and babbling, trying to get a sentence out of my mouth about how much I appreciated her. and she just kind of put her hand on my shoulder and said, "It's okay, baby. You know, it's all right. I know what you're trying to say." Um, and I've met a few others. I've met Oakland's own Ishmael Reed. That was another. You just look. I'm reading these people, and I love them, and then I meet them, and I'm just babbling. I
Yeah.
can't get the words out.
Yeah, that's it reminds me so much of like the little gift question that I always ask all of my guests because whenever she puts her hand on your shoulder, says, basically I know what you're trying to say, I get you, and that had to mean something to you in that moment. So that really does lead me to my little gift question. Can you give the audience an example of a time in your life where somebody's done something little for you that might have just been a little give on their end, but really made an impact on you and in your life?
Yeah, I'm going to start. So I could use Alice Walker calming me down. I'm going to go with somebody who did something small for me, but also a lot of things that were really big. And that was Dr. Anya Peterson Royce, who was my dissertation committee chair. When I graduated from IU, my PhD in anthropology, she bought my doctoral hood for me and hooded me at the ceremony. And it's a small give, although hoods are by no means inexpensive. Um, it's a small give, but it meant a lot to me to have somebody who had been working with me for so many years and putting up with, you know, uh, rewrites and long periods of research and writing to actually proclaim me Dr. Baham. That really got me going. That was like the final big push to make everything happen. And literally, when I defended my dissertation, she was the one who led everybody in standing up around the table and calling me Dr. Baham. It was the first time I'd heard it out of anybody's mouth, and
Wow.
and it was real. And I broke down into tears. I cried like a baby.
I can
Um,
only imagine. Wow, that's a beautiful story.
yeah.
Beautiful story. Well, the second question is, can you give the audience an example of a little thing that they can do in their community that might just be a little give on their end, but might make a big impact on the other side?
Well, in the spirit of the people's detective, I'm asking people to think about what happens to vulnerable populations, in particular, vulnerable populations of young women in their towns and cities. Sex trafficking comes in a lot of different forms. And some of it doesn't necessarily even involve being moved from state to state. Someone can be trafficked in their own home, um, in the sense that somebody is holding some information against them, essentially blackmailing them to um, to work for them in some way. Um, I'm asking people to become a little bit more aware of this and to contribute to an organization in your community that's fighting sex trafficking in some small way, in terms of just providing information, or in a way in which that organization might be working with authorities to liberate people who are trafficked. Even having some information that you can present at church meetings or community meetings or to your in front of your town's board of supervisors, or whatever. Just get a moment to speak about this and present information about this organization, or to put it out there if you have some kind of community email chain.
Mhm.
Just help get information out about this so that this isn't a hidden crime, because the problem really is silence.
Yes, absolutely. So you had mentioned that there's several within your book. You went ahead and you put a bunch of nonprofits that are willing to help with these type things as well. Is there any nonprofit that you want to feature today in regards to that?
There's 2 if you're okay with that.
Yes.
There are a lot that are back in my book. The first is the SOAP Project, founded by, Teresa Flores, who I interviewed on my companion podcast for the People's Detective novel. They do something that's incredibly fascinating. They provide information for people who may be trafficked on soap wrappers. They put their soap in motels where some of this activity is happening. So if people are being trafficked to be used to be prostituted, some of that activity may be taking places, a lot of it, in fact, may be taking places in hotels and motels. Um, the person who themselves is being trafficked will have a moment perhaps where they're going to the bathroom. They open up the wrapper for the soap. Within that soap wrapper is something that acknowledges, there's a statement that acknowledges resources that you can use to get out of the situation you're in. But it's also really important. So you have a hotline there that we're seeing. Um, it's really important that that person has now in front of them something that acknowledges what is happening to them. Teresa herself was trafficked and didn't have the language for trafficking. She wasn't moved across state borders. She was trafficked while living at home. So she was asked to escape from home in the middle of the night, get in someone's car. They drove her to a motel. She was prostituted, and then she was driven back home. And this went on for years. And she didn't really know what this was that was happening to her, but she was facing blackmail and extortion, the threat of shaming her family. She had been sexually abused, and it had been filmed. And the people had threatened to show that film to family unless she did what they told her to do. That is sex trafficking, even if it doesn't fit under the strict definition of trafficking. And so just having that, being able to see that soap, what's written on the wrapper, can bring awareness to somebody who's in that space and awareness of resources that might be available to them.
Wow, I've never heard of this nonprofit before, but that's so smart to put that information
Totally.
inside the soap wrapper, because then that is usually a place, the only time you might be able to be by yourself.
Totally. The only,
Real,
and that's it. And this can only really come from somebody like Teresa Flores, who was trafficked themselves and understood this. She understands the spaces that you might be in. When are you going to be alone? Right? This is that moment.
yes, it's so sad that we even have to think about these things, but I'm glad that the resource is available for someone in that situation. That is very, very genius to think to put it in a place like that where there may be some privacy. So thank you so much for featuring that nonprofit. I really, really appreciate it. And all the information you shared with us today has been so interesting. Why don't you tell the audience where they can learn more about you, they can get to know you, they can reach out, get your books, find out more, give them all the details.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're the People's Detective, subtitled "A Sunny True Heart Mystery," is available at all your major booksellers, whether that's Amazon, although I would advise maybe waiting until their strike is over, or bookshop.org. Your independent booksellers, you can ask them to carry it. Barnes and Noble carries it. You can also get it through my publisher's website. I am with a small women of color owned publisher, Bootstrap Publications. You can reach me at nicholasbaham.com. Find my email there, all of my social media handles. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well. I need to work my Threads page, but I'll get that going pretty soon. And I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to do a TikTok. My website's a great place to start because it has all of my podcasts, my podcast appearances, all the different ways that you can access me.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all those details. And you mentioned that there was another nonprofit that you really wanted to feature today.
Yes, it's called Missy, M-I, and then there's 3 S's, E-Y. And Missy is an Oakland-based organization that offers everything from advocacy to counseling for victims of sex trafficking in this area. So while I wanted to offer for your audiences both an organization that has a broad national reach now, with the Soap Project, and one that has a really strong local reach in Missy. Either of these two organizations or contributing to them would be extremely positive and healing. They both do great work, both of them. And there may be organizations in your area, wherever you are when you're listening to this broadcast, there may be something in your area that you want to support.
Ah, love it. Great nonprofits. For everybody out there who's watching this episode today, go find out more about Nicholas, get to know him, find his books online, go visit his website, learn more. And if those nonprofits really stood out to you, please do go visit those websites, find out more. If it's something you're passionate about, please go make a donation. These donations, although small, $1 or $5, multiplied by the many people who watch this show, can make a huge impact on these nonprofits and really, really help spread their mission. So thank you so much for being on today, Nicholas, and thank you to the audience for watching, and we will see you all next week. If you enjoyed this episode of Little Give, head on over to our website at littlegive.com. You'll be able to find all the information about previous episodes and past guests that we've had on. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Little Give, all the information is also on the website. And if you have a nonprofit that you love and would like to recommend be on the show, all of that information is also on the website. We really appreciate you watching today, and we can't wait to see you again next week.